Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, Canadian Missing Project. This is our lovely executive producer, star of the show, big girl. Huck. She's a good girl too. Really good. Really good. You're a good puppy. Let me leave me alone, Dad. I gotta go to sleep. So, thank you for being here. Our new website, missing411.com. Please check it out. And starting December 1st, we will have DVDs, Blu-rays. We'll have Missing 411, The Hunted, back available on DVD. And I've got a new book coming out by the same title, American Sasquatch. And what it's going to do is it's going to pick up what we couldn't have in the movie. And it's got some great things in there, I'm telling you. I let a few people read it. They said, Dave, this is going to break things open. I think it will shake up a few people, there's no doubt. During the last several months, I've gotten some severe flack from people saying, Dave, these cases, there's no mystery to them, this and that, and on and on. Well, I want to go back to a case in Michigan. Michigan has tons of very, very unusual cases. In fact, several states, including Wisconsin, have cases that are mind-boggling that are near Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes. There's something about that I mean, it goes back to water and how water plays a key role in all of these cases. And I know some of the people that are new here don't get that, but you will. Now, in this case, it happened immediately adjacent to water. Happened in a little town called Ingleston, in Michigan. This is a little town. This is Lake Michigan. This is the Wisconsin-Michigan border. Menominee, Marinette. And it happened on this side, about 17 miles north of Menominee in this little town. Right outside of town, in a very, very rural area out here. Hardly anybody is out here. There's not a big population base. This happened in 1953. There was hardly anybody living out here. And now I'll explain it to you and why we are here. Involves a case named Bev Bradley. Some reports said 2 years, some said 2.5 years. All stated that she was small for her age. The background to this story is as important as the story itself. It happened on May 20th, 1953 at about 11:30 in the morning. Again, just on the outskirts of Ingleston. It's about 30 miles north of Green Bay, Wisconsin. I can't implore on you how rural this area is. Now, Beverly was visiting her grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Edward Van Cleek. And the Van Cleeks had just recently completed a cabin that was going to be their home on the outskirts of Ingleston. And their intent was to build a chicken ranch out there. So they had the home completed, and Mrs. Van Cleek had traveled down to Milwaukee to visit her daughter, Mrs. Ocala Bradley, and Beverly's sister, who was 7. Well, they decided at the last minute that Beverly wanted to go with her grandma and see their new home. So the grandma took Beverly north, and they decided to go up to their new home with their grandpa and stay at the house for a few days. Interestingly, small tidbit, Beverly's parents, her mom and dad, were separated. Not divorced, but they were separated. So Beverly goes to stay with the grandparents at this brand new cabin. Hadn't been lived in very long. Another key part to the story. I've written about several cases over the years where kids disappeared from homes that were just recently occupied and were newly built. I'm not sure what to make of that, and I'm not sure what the meaning is. It's just one of those facts that hangs out there. Well, Beverly liked the outdoors and the woods, and on May 20th at 11:30 a.m., Mrs. Van Cleek put Beverly out in the front yard to play. And she had a doll that she was playing with. And the grandmother was going to be gone just a few minutes and had a few chores to do. Grandpa was gone doing other chores away from the property. So just the grandmother was there with Beverly alone. So Grandma comes back after a couple minutes. Beverly's gone. Yelled for her, no answer. Looked around, no answer. Hadn't heard any cars come by, hadn't heard anyone say anything, hadn't heard Beverly cry, nothing. So it wasn't long after that that the grandpa comes home. And now they're both searching for Beverly. And they searched for a couple hours until they finally called the local sheriff. Now the sheriff is a man named Ed Reindell. Very experienced guy, been around the block a long time, been the sheriff for a long time, and he immediately took charge of the search. He immediately called for more sheriff's deputies, and they started arriving. As the other deputies are arriving, Ed Van Cleek, her grandpa, has a massive heart attack and keels over and passes out in her front yard. Deputies stop everything and they start working on Ed. And they get him to regain consciousness. And they then transport him to Menominee to the local hospital. And he stabilizes. Unbelievable. If the deputies weren't there, there's no doubt he probably would have died. Well, the locals started to hear about this, and they started to pour into the Van Cleek property knowing that a girl's missing. And before long, they had almost 50 people there. And the sheriffs formed them up into groups to search specific areas no more than 2 miles away from the property. Each had their quadrant. Well, they searched all day, calling her name, looking for tracks. If nobody's ever been to Michigan, during May, it rains a lot, it's cloudy a lot, the ground's muddy, damp. It's good to find tracks in. They weren't finding any tracks. They weren't hearing anything. But everyone was concerned about something. And I heard this, and I read this at least 10 times. They were all afraid of bears. Not for themselves, but for Beverly. And they said that that first day, multiple searchers saw bear in that area. The sheriff made a statement at the end of that first day that the bears here don't bother anybody. There were a lot of people that said contrary things to Sheriff Reindell, saying, hey, if you run across a black bear with some cubs, yeah, you're going to have trouble. Now, this is Beverly. Now, again, some statements said she was 2, some said she was 2.5, but all said that she was small for her age. Right? So Sheriff Reindell stayed on scene all night, didn't leave. committed to trying to find this young girl. And there were several other people that stayed with him. May 21st, the following day, got more searchers there. And the state police, county sheriffs, they had some trackers there, Boy Scouts, farmers, and a group of ministers all came to help. None of them had seen any tracks. Now what happened was, in the middle of the day, all heck broke loose. They had one of the worst thunderstorms in weeks, and it went on for the majority of the day. Thunder, lightning, super heavy rain, heavy wind. It was a disaster. And the sheriff was really concerned because Beverly was so young and she wasn't dressed for the weather. They said she was wearing overalls, a shirt, shoes, carrying a doll. And the sheriff said he was shocked that nobody had found that doll yet, because usually kids start dropping things. Well, they kept searching. A lot of them had to pull out because of the lightning, and they took shelter until late in the day, and then they all went back out again. Now that kind of rain could be good and bad. Yeah, you could easily find more tracks on that if she was mobile and moving. Now, late that second day, well, yeah, it was the first day after she disappeared, her parents showed up. And the dad immediately engaged and started searching with the rest of the people. Mother stayed with the mom. It was chaos. The dirt in the area was described as soft, muddy in spots, yet nobody was finding any tracks. Late the first day after she disappeared, the sheriff made a call for the Coast Guard to send a helicopter and any ground troops that they had that could help in the search. Well, within several hours, they got some ground pounders from the Coast Guard, and they said a helicopter would be coming the next morning. Well, that's a really good sign. Because in Michigan, the woods are so thick that sometimes being up high, you could see areas and get to areas quickly that people on the ground couldn't. And if it's an open area, they can see it really well. Well, that second day, they have more ministers, more farmers, more sheriffs, more local citizens, and they got 2 detectives from the Michigan State Police that were looking at this from a criminal angle, any possible crime that might have occurred. There were rumors that existed that a dark car had been in this area the day she disappeared, but it could never be substantiated and nothing really ever came of it. But it made the paper and it was talked about heavily. And a lot of people were thinking that, oh, she had to have been abducted. That's what they were saying. So early on May 22nd, the Coast Guard left from Traverse City. And the commander of that was a man named Morosky, who had years of flying this big flying helicopter. Ensign Olson was the co-pilot. AD-3, the mechanic, was a man named Schmidt. They left very early and they did a refueling stop in Escanaba. And they arrived in Menominee at 11:40 in the morning. When they landed at the airport, the sheriff met him there. Sheriff laid out maps and explained the area that he wanted to search. He explained the girl, what she was wearing, and said, hey, we really need you guys. And whatever you can do, I'd be appreciative. Please stay as long as you can, blah, blah, blah. Well, the crew took off and they went to the area. Now let me get back to this map here. So this is the regional airport where the helicopter landed. They came and they flew the coastal route up to Ingleston. And then they flew inland to the area where the sheriff told them to start looking. And they later stated that from the air, they could see the cars parked along the highway of the searchers where they were searching in the Van Cleek residence. So they knew they were on the right spot, and they had a map of that area from the sheriff. So what they did is they flew the entire outer perimeter. This is per Murawski, the commander. He said, we first flew the outer perimeter just to get a feeling of what we had and what we could see. And then we started flying a route up and back, up and back, so they wouldn't miss anything. Rather than just flying helter-skelter, this is the way to do it. And the systematic search, they were on their fourth pass going through the area. And on that fourth pass, they saw a small, looked like a girl, laying on a dry spot in the middle of a marsh, next to a tree stump. They said that her knees were pulled up to her chest, and she was laying on her stomach, not moving. Well, the Coast Guard crew knew that it had stormed here the day before, which was one reason they didn't get there yesterday. So Murawski is radioing to the ground teams where this spot is at, and they need to get there post haste. Well, Reindel was on the ground with his ground teams trying to get there as fast as they can. And they described the ground getting to this area as very thick, slow moving, a lot of deadfall on the ground. Just a tough area to get to. And they said that they'd be there in several minutes. And the Coast Guard team kept radioing in that they were heading in the right direction. Well, Murawski kind of thought about it and said, I think I could land my chopper and get to the girl faster than these guys can. So he finds a landing pad not far away, sets down, and he and his team sprint over to the girl. Smart. He later stated that Beverly was conscious, but wouldn't say anything. He said that he held her until Sheriff Reindel arrived just a few minutes later. And it was agreed that they would put the girl on their helicopter and fly her to the Menominee to their local hospital. So everyone takes the girl back to the chopper, they load her on board, and it was an 8-minute flight to the hospital. And the sheriff had already radioed ahead that this was an emergency, get people out in the parking lot, get nurses ready. And they were ready. Helicopter landed, nurses put her on a gurney, she was whisked into the hospital. Now they described her as non-communicative, conscious, moving, but that was it. At that point, she had been missing for 49 hours. So she gets in the hospital, her parents are notified, and this is one of the first pictures that was taken of her in her hospital bed. I want you to pay close attention to those eyes. See how wide open they are? Now, one of the things over the years that has always struck me as super unusual is just about every time a child is found under these conditions, they have these wide open eyes. I can't explain it. I've never seen it. For what it's worth. Well, Sheriff Reindel described the spot to the press where Beverly was found. And he made this statement to the Lowell newspaper reporter. He said, "The place in the swamp where Beverly was found is muddy, wet, full of slashings and slabs." Those are his words. "Yet her shoes were dry and there was no mud on them." End of quotes. Another article in the Waterloo Courier stated, Reindl said it was impossible that the child wandered into the dense woods by herself. End of quotes. Other searchers told the press that they had gone past this exact area where she was found just hours before, and she wasn't there. How many times have we heard that? You think about that. Now, this wasn't a spot that was, the helicopter people said it was a dry, clear spot in the middle of the swamp. That's what they said. Now, she was found wearing underpants and a shirt that were all dry. Her overalls were laying 5 feet from her. Reindl also said this at the time, "It looks almost inevitable that someone had been holding her in the woods just a few hours before she was found." Think about that. There's 100 searchers out there. How risky would that have been? Searchers reconfirmed that they had gone directly past that spot within the last 3 hours. Multiple people said that. They all said there was mud and water all around her. And, this is a biggie, all of the searchers said that those woods were infested with mosquitoes, and Beverly had 0 bites. Her overalls and her doll were laying almost in the same spot 5 feet away. She was lying next to a stump that partially concealed her. Let's think about this. A 2.5-year-old child. If she cared about that doll so much that she carried it on her own through all of this mirage of horrendous woods, don't you think she would have been clutching it while she was laying there sleeping? I'm just saying. I've had kids. I know they like to sleep with their dolls. That was just my first hunch. I said that I found unusual. Now, Beverly's parents also stated this to the press a few days later. Their words, "Something's wrong about my child's disappearance." Those are the words. They didn't say they think she was kidnapped. They said something's wrong about this. Now, the mom and dad stayed with Beverly while she was in the hospital for 3 days. And the doctor said that she was suffering from a very mild case of hypothermia and shock. I have never heard of one of the kids being missing for 48, 49, 72 hours. And a doctor saying that they were in shock. Shock implies to me that something really strange happened, besides just walking into the woods. But that's just me. Mrs. Bradley said that Beverly had said some very vague things. And I read 6 or 7 different articles about what she supposedly said. And Mrs. Bradley said that she said something about being in a car and being in a house. But the words were mumbled, and the sheriff said that he couldn't quite understand what she was saying. After she got out of the hospital, Mrs. Bradley took Beverly to the end of her grandmother's driveway and asked her, "Which way did you go?" And she said that Beverly seemed very unsure of what she was asking and just said yes. Think about that. Now, Beverly was found 1.5 miles from her grandparents' home, in the middle of a search area. I want you to think about this for a second. You're the kidnapper. You've got Beverly. Why would you go right back into the middle of an area where there's 100 people looking and put Beverly right back into the middle of the area where everyone's looking and just looked for her? Doesn't make any sense, does it? No, it doesn't. Be rational. Be a critical thinker. That makes no sense. None at all. The area out there has dozens of dirt roads. You could drive 5 miles from there and put her on the side of a dirt road or on the side of a highway to Menominee, where she would be found, and just put her on the side of the road and leave. The insanity of putting her right back into a place where she'd be found meant only one thing. They intended for her to be found. They didn't want her to die. And they put her right under the nose of that helicopter. And remember, major thunderstorm, rain, wind the day before. Multiple bloodhounds the first and second day. The first day before there was ever any thunderstorm. But they couldn't pick up a scent. It doesn't make any sense. It's a little girl. Should have been sent everywhere. I've said this before, and I actually get a lot of heat from you guys when I've stated it, but I don't care. Because I think more times than not it's true. Beverly disappeared with no males at the residence. And specifically, her dad wasn't there. Just a female. What does that mean? I have no idea. I look for facts. I look for consistent facts case to case. And then another weird one. If you followed me for a long time, we have had 7 or 8 cases out of maybe 2,000 where a young child disappears from a home that they just moved into and was newly built. Did that house disrupt something that was there? And they don't like it? I don't know. I'm just telling you the facts. Now, the sheriff did say one thing a couple weeks after she was found. She was not molested. Thankfully. Thank God. If she wasn't at the location 3 hours before she was found, she was placed there just before the helicopter took off. And she was placed there unconscious. The vast majority of times when these kids are found, they're either found unconscious or just recently awoke. If she was alive and conscious, she would be getting up and moving. and she wasn't. She was groggy. Now, Michigan, the Great Lakes, I've said this to you earlier, has many of the strangest cases imaginable. And I spoke to you just north of this in Lake Superior was the location where a fighter jet was scrambled because Canadian Air Force said a UFO was flying over Lake Superior and they wanted it to intercept. So the UFO is flying from east to west right over the middle of Lake Superior. Fighter jet comes, intercepts, and the radar shows when the two come together, they both disappear. The fighter was never found. That's north of this. And there are many more UFO cases in this area. Many. Now, originally, the Michigan State Police sent 2 detectives to the location to follow up on any possible criminal activity. A criminal case was never opened. Case closed. She was found, over and done with. So the real question is, what happened here? I think we all know what happened. I'll let you come to your own conclusion. But if you're a critical thinker and you follow the thought lines of the sheriff and the searchers, there's no way she got there on her own walking through the woods. Impossible. Her shoes were clean, her clothes were dry. Right? We all agree with that? Okay. It thunderstormed and rained the day before. Now, a couple weeks ago, I talked to you about thunderstorms and UFOs. They go hand in hand. So my question is, there's no way she was out in the open when that thunderstorm was blowing wind and rain. She'd be soaked, and she would have advanced stages of hypothermia. And she didn't have that. And her clothes were dry, and her shoes were clean. So where was she? I'm sorry. I'm sure some of you still think that this was just a common kidnapping. And first of all, her grandparents' cabin was in the middle of nowhere. There were no cars heard. Sure, somebody could have parked down the street and grabbed her, but in the middle of nowhere? Really? And then I still think it makes 0 sense to put her back in the middle of the search zone. We've had this happen before, and I've explained this to you before. Some people refuse to believe me, but I don't think criminals are that stupid. Yeah, there's a lot of dumb ones, but they're not that stupid. And then what would have been the intent to kidnap her? She wasn't molested. So friends, I greatly appreciate you being here. And I brought back this case because we're going to be talking about some other things right around here. I think this is one of those few cases that should waken some people up to our work. Remember kindness. You got to be patient with people. And oh, I know that. And you got to be appreciative that you're here, and I am very appreciative. Please make sure you are subscribed. If you have a case you want me to look at, send it to me at missing411.com. Please look at our DVDs, books, movie posters at missing411.com. And we've got stickers, posters, all kinds of things. You can watch our movies, Missing 411, Missing 411 The Hunted, Missing 411 The UFO Connection, all on Tubi for free right now. Be safe, be kind. Paulides out.